Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Discussing Afghanistan, a very, very timely topic and a difficult and challenging situation for Afghans themselves, particularly women, and of course for everybody outside who's concerned about them and is trying to help. And to discuss the situation, we have our collaborator and strategy consultant Rabia Farhang, who is herself of Afghan origin, here to interview a representative from Women for Afghan Women about their work with refugees arriving from Afghanistan. So thank you all for being here or for listening to the recording. And we really encourage you to try to help out financially as well. This work is demanding and of course costs money. We thank you for your help. So Rabia, I'll let you take it from here.
Great, thank you, Yana. Hi, everybody. I'm Rabia Farhang, and I am here on behalf of both the Kota Alliance and Women for Afghan Women, two organizations whose work I've been following and supporting and been involved with over the years, both very focused on raising awareness about women and helping women in slightly different ways, but ways that are very synergetic. Our host, Kota Alliance, and Yana is the founder. Kota Alliance is an umbrella organization, and they elevate collaboration across women-centered organizations, nonprofits, social enterprises alike, who share the like-minded goal of improving gender equality and supporting women globally and locally. And then Women for Afghan Women is a nonprofit dedicated to protecting and promoting the rights of disenfranchised Afghan women, both within Afghanistan and also here in New York City. You may have heard of them, and you'll learn a little bit more about them today. We were planning on having a conversation with the New York City director, Nahid Barham. But as these things go, especially today with everything that's going on with the refugee population and the resettlement and the efforts here in the US, there was a last minute need for Nahid to go to one of the army bases. So with us today, we're very glad to have Ms. Shagufa Rahmani. She's also one of Nahid's colleagues at Women for Afghan Women and a case manager. And we're thrilled to be able to speak to you and to also share just some insights and a little bit more color on different ways that you could help Afghan refugees who are resettling in the US. Our focus is going to be particularly specifically in the New York area. But, as Yana said, please, feel free to ask any questions. There's no help that's too small, certainly no help that's too big in terms of what people can do. And what Shagufa is going to talk us through today are different things that they're working as an organization in terms of supporting these Afghan refugees who will be coming into the US in the New York area, and also other ways for you to participate and help as well. So Shagufa Jan, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I want to start out by just asking you to talk a little bit about Women for Afghan Women and the work that they've done over the last 20 years. I have known of them for years, obviously. The work has been focused within Afghanistan, and I know that the organization started with work inside Afghanistan. But I also know that the New York office, I think, has been around now for about 10 years, the entire organization, 20 years. Maybe tell us a little bit about the history of how the organization got started and what they set out to do 20 years ago, if you don't mind.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. That's such a great question because, I love to talk about that. Originally, Women for Afghan Women, during the 9/11 and during the first time when the Taliban was in power in Afghanistan, the organization was founded by a group of non-Afghan women. And here in New York City, they wanted to help women under the rule of Taliban during that time in the 90s, in the mid-90s. And because they didn't have access to Afghan women in Afghanistan, they found this place here in Flushing, New York. And because this is a very populated Afghan community, and they wanted to talk to women here and to figure a way how to find about the needs of women, how to do advocacy for them, how to, really reach them. But they come across to this huge Afghan community here in Flushing, New York, and they noticed and realized through the work with them that Afghan families, and especially women here, they were in such a need of advocacy themselves, and and they were in need of basic services such as public assistance, ESL classes, interpretation, and different offices. Because today, in New York City and state, there are language lines and there are interpretation services that 25 years ago and 20 years ago, this wasn't such a common thing. Really, I have been living here, for more than 25 years ago. Things are very, very different than the time that I was here. So this was a problem that they saw among these women, and they thought that women here, and especially women and Afghan families, are in such a great need. And the organization started actually here. The first 2 years was a lot of advocacy work, and in 2003, the community center in Queens was launched. But the programs in Afghanistan, the organization was launched in 2006 in Afghanistan, and the programs started running, the shelters, the transitional homes, the children's support center, and most of our work was actually started in 2007. So the community center has been around here since 2003. For the past 18 years. Yes.
Okay. So, and then the work in Afghanistan was focused on providing shelter for women and young girls. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Of course. So, although our scope of work is a little bit different than, between Afghanistan and here in the US, majority of the work, almost all of our work is gender-based violence, work in Afghanistan. And, this started in 2006 and became one of the largest women's rights organizations in Afghanistan. We were the first organization to start Children's Support Center. The Children's Support Centers in Afghanistan is a place where Women for Afghan Women was caretaker for children 5 years and older, for those women who are in jail for various crimes, and most of those crimes, unfortunately, they were so-called, crimes that these women were in jail for adultery. And that means such a different things in Afghanistan under the Sharia law. Women that they were accused of like running away from home, killing their husbands. And these were women that their families and maybe their in-laws disowned them because of this crime that they were accused of. And their children, they didn't have any family members to take care of their children. So their children were in jail with them. And Women for Afghan Women created and was able to launch this Children's Support Center and took those children. And they were in our care. They were provided with education, with counseling, school, everything that a child at that age needs, to thrive and to have a healthy environment. And we had our women shelters that women who were, survivors and victims of gender-based violence, sexual assault, trafficking, forced marriages, and all of these. There are so many, barriers that women were facing in Afghanistan. These women were in the care of Women for Afghan Women, and they were living in shelters. We had hundreds of women living under the care still when the Taliban took over. We had transitional homes. It was for the women who, once they served their time in jails and they got out, but then they were out for such a long time, they didn't have homes to go back. They didn't have their families to take them and the community to accept them as, because they were in jail for, these moral crimes that they were in jail for. So we had our transitional homes. They still came back, and Women for Afghan Women took them, their children, until they were reunited, with their families, that they, we had a ton of work for women that specifically was for gender-based violence, that, and I'm so proud to say that we were one of the largest women's rights organizations in Afghanistan, and still are, actually. Yes, we are.
That's a great way to transition actually the conversation. You were not based just in one or two big cities. You had places, right? You had shelters and transitional homes all across the country, or were there certain regions that you were specifically operating in?
No, we had more than 34 facilities in 12 provinces in Afghanistan that we operated. And yes, we weren't in one or two cities. We were in every major cities and small provinces and big provinces. We had most of the people who did this job were women in provinces that actually were not easy to work, and they were so brave, and they worked there. And yes.
Yeah. So tell us now, with these tragic events that have unfolded since August, and with the Taliban having taken over the government, and what's happening in the 2 months since they've been governing, what has happened to your operations, both in Afghanistan, and of course, I'd like to hear a little bit more about what's happening in New York as well. But let's start talking about what you've seen and how it has impacted you, your residents and your workers at your locations in Afghanistan.
I want to speak more a little bit first. I want to speak about in New York, what's going on with our services in New York, but maybe I will let Christine to give us a little bit, information about the operations in Afghanistan. So in New York City, beside our work that we were doing for the past 18 years and the work that I have been doing as a case manager for the past 6 years, our work changed drastically and literally overnight in August. Obviously, we saw this coming, but our work, we actually hasn't stopped working since August 15. All of our staff members work really for hours and hours, tireless hours, because every Afghan that I have ever worked with in New York, not just in New York, across the country, even from other countries, they reached out to us and they wanted to know how they could help their families evacuate, how, to leave Afghanistan, because every single Afghan that I have worked with and that reached out to us, they have family members. In Afghanistan, like all of us here at Women for Afghan Women, I have family members, immediate family members, that they are living still there, that we were not able to help them to that. And we have my colleagues also. So because like I said, the work was a little bit different. It's a little bit different in New York City. In New York City, we are not only working, our workers, not just gender-based violence work. We provide other services. We have adult education programs for the community members, and Women for Afghan Women is not only in New York City serving Afghans, and it's not only serving women. It's open as an organization, open for everyone. But because of the cultural competency and the language competency that we provide, most of our participants are Afghans and South Asians and some other Middle Eastern countries. So we have our adult education programs, we have youth programs, we have legal services, and our big social services that we provided. So we were very busy already, and on top of all the services that we provided, now hundreds and hundreds of Afghans called us with this, with the midst of this crisis, because they wanted to help their families. And now we are working on humanitarian paroles. That's an application that is a very, very hot topic that's been, in surface for a while now. And Afghan families who have family members who are at a really high risk, our organizations have our own attorney, staff attorney, and we just hired during this time another full-time staff attorney who is specifically working on humanitarian paroles, P2 applications, and other SID applications for those Afghan allies who work with the American Army, but they weren't able to evacuate. So right now, beside all of the work that we previously did with the community, we are working with our attorneys, our legal team, along with a huge team of pro bono attorneys from outside of our organization, helping Afghan families with their humanitarian parole applications. It's a very long, lengthy application. And just also, I want you to keep in mind that when one person calls and they want to do an application, a humanitarian parole. Usually that individual have several family members, and each one of them have so many like family members. We have families that they have their names on the list and they want to apply for 25 people, 30 people, as small as 2 people. And for humanitarian parole, every single person needs their own application regardless of their age. So everyone needs their own application, even if it's a newborn baby. So our office worked tremendously increased. So we are so grateful for the help of people who reached out and they wanted to really help us with this application. We have a good team of attorneys right now that working on those. Christine, can you just give a little bit of information on the operations in Afghanistan, please?
And I know that some of this may, for safety and security reasons, you may not be able to share a lot, but to the extent that you can, just give everybody a sense of what's happened to your operations in Afghanistan.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Thank you,
Great.
Shagufa and Rabia. Hi, I'm Christine. I'm development manager at Women for Afghan Women. I work with the teams both in Afghanistan
Your
and
connection's a little bit
in the
choppy, I
US.
think.
Sorry. I hope you can all hear me. In Afghanistan right now, our operations, some of our operations are postponed and some are still ongoing. Our ongoing operations are our programs with the UN, which is supporting internally displaced persons in Afghanistan and also refugee returnees. Obviously, there's a lot more IDPs in Afghanistan now, and a lot of people are stuck in Kabul because everyone went to Kabul to flee the Taliban. Our shelters for women are all closed at the moment because we were ordered to do that, and also for security reasons. We still have women and children under our care. Our children's support centers are open, but our women's shelters are closed. And so for the women who are still WA's responsibility, we have them in various safe houses that we can't really disclose, but safe to say that they're all being checked in they have daily check-ins with our staff in Afghanistan, and they are getting mental health counseling every day as well. In terms of evacuation, we have had some success in getting people out, but obviously we haven't had, it's not everyone that needs to get out. Not everyone has gotten out yet, so we're still working on that. We are doing everything we can to connect people to the right places, and all this is for our high-risk staff and our clients, so women and children who are at risk of being harmed or killed by the Taliban or other groups, including their families. So we are still working on that day and night, making sure that they have the proper paperwork and visas and all that stuff.
Okay, thank you very much, Christine, for that. So, I mean, in terms of the work that you're doing in New York and probably also in Afghanistan, certainly in Afghanistan, there's probably a big need for collaboration and partnerships. Shagufa John, you talked about how you're trying to staff up within your office here in New York and also some pro bono help, but are there some other partnerships and collaborations that you're either seeking or that you've already started on? Maybe tell us a little bit about what that looks like.
Yes, thank you so much. We are so grateful for organizations, donors, individuals, community members. It was incredible how many people and organizations reach out to us and they wanted to help. So we wouldn't have been able to do this without the help of all these people. And these different organizations, agencies. We are at the moment partnering with every single refugee resettlement organizations that they are working in New York City and outside of New York, in every state that there are bases. To some capacity, we have been working with these refugee resettlement agencies. we are partnering with Airbnb to provide temporary housing for refugees who are in need of housing. We are partnering with Uber that provided us with funding that can help our volunteers and our families who need transportation from one point to another. And there are several, like I mentioned, refugee resettlement agencies that they reach out to us, and we are partnering at different capacities with them. If right now, at the moment, we do not have a lot of refugees, or very few families that they have their families are actually resettling in New York City. Traditionally, the US government did not bring refugees in New York because of a very high cost of living in New York City. Those refugees that, because right now the people that are in the bases, they are parolees. They were evacuated under an emergency humanitarian crisis that they were brought in here. But before this, since the start of the time when the Americans went to the US, in Afghanistan, and we have those Afghans who work with the American army. They are refugees who are coming, and that has been going on for many years. Almost most of these refugees, they went to other cities such as Virginia, to Texas, California, and Sacramento, California, different cities, but not in New York City. And the same goes with the parolees. We do not have, I'm not aware of any, bases that are holding people here in New York. But we just had a call the other day with some agencies in Westchester and Yonkers in New York that there are families resettling there. Not a lot, but we have those families who have family members already in New York City, that they are reuniting with their families. Other than that, we are but the work that we are doing, the partnership that we're doing with these resettlement agencies, we're really providing them with cultural competency, because they might do the big work of resettlement, but because of the cultural competency that we offer here at Women for Afghan Women, sometimes that goes really a long way. Agencies call us and they want us to do training for their staff, help them with information about donations. If people want to donate, what kind of items should they donate? Appropriate clothing for women, food, home items. What are the basic needs that these families need? So we are, in that way, we are partnering with a lot of agencies, in New York City and outside of New York. For example, I had personally like caseworkers and case managers from different parts, from Wisconsin, from Tennessee, from Virginia, from Houston, Texas. And they call us to say like, hey, I'm a case manager. I work with a group of women, Afghan women right now, that they are in the bases and they want to move to New York. Like, can you tell us a little bit about New York? How is, the living? So we are helping them in every way possible that these agencies need guidance, so to better serve the families right now.
So you're basically working with resettlement agencies for Afghan refugees all over the country, yes, not just specifically in the New York area.
No.
And to clarify for people who may not know some of these nuances, but when Afghan refugees come in here under humanitarian parole visa, that means there is no support. There's no financial support. There's no government support, right? They are here and they're here for a limited time, yeah, because of the danger. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a humanitarian parole application traditionally was for someone who was at an extreme high risk. Mm-hmm. And that application could and still could be approved. That petition could be approved by the USCIS within hours to weeks. But once these people are evacuated and they are brought here, they have no immigration status because they were evacuated under an emergency humanitarian crisis. And all of these people that are in the bases, that's the status that they have right now. But because this is a very historic moment for the Afghan, families that never at this, capacity Afghans came to the US. and through a lot of advocacy of organizations like us and all these other resettlement agencies. And they pushed because they knew that these people need some kind of support from the government. There are certain public assistance that is going to be available for them, and that is Medicaid, that is SNAP, that is the food stamp. It's a program that families could purchase food with, and work authorization, social security number, because these are some of the necessities that families need right now. And once they get out of the bases, and they are going to be connected with the resettlement agencies to help them for I think for 6 months or 8 months, I'm not 100% sure, that they are going to be helping these families. So the humanitarian parole applicants basically are going to be the same as the people that are right now living in the bases. But a humanitarian parole application can be filed by people living in the crisis, but because the American embassy is closed, a lot of Afghans do not have passports. Some of them do not even have their electronic tazkira, which is an identification card that Afghans have, somewhat like serve as a birth certificate, because not every Afghan child is born in a hospital to be issued a birth certificate. So there are no passports being issued for even before August 15 in Afghanistan. So now the USCIS, the US government, allowed Afghans for other people outside of Afghanistan to file these petitions. So that's why every Afghan, who are living outside of the US, they are trying to actually file these petitions for their families. And this is a discretionary. There is no promise that every application is going to be really approved. It depends. Like, although this is and it is a humanitarian crisis, but the 35 plus million people that are in Afghanistan, they're all under the rule of the Taliban. As much as we would love for everyone's applications to be approved, but unfortunately we know that they are not. So, and the fee is not cheap. It's $575 per person. And really the chances that how many of these applications are going to be approved, we really don't know. So, but this is a resource that is available, and people are taking advantage of that. Once a petition is approved, when people come here, they are not going to have any kind of immigration status.
Right.
Then their family members, who is someone that is the financial sponsor for that family member, they have the responsibility of hiring an attorney, or maybe doing it on their own if they are capable of doing that, to apply for an adjustment of status. And
so this is a good place, if you wouldn't mind then talking a little bit. There's been so much interest, as you started to say in the beginning of this, right, from people, from organizations, but also from individuals. And as people listen to this conversation and they're really interested in trying to find ways to help, one of the obvious ways, as we said in the beginning, and we want to remind everybody and share with everybody the work that your organization does and how they can donate to help support. What are some of the ways that people can participate in different ways that they could support some of these efforts for the refugees?
Thank you so much, Rabia Jan. There are some family members that, like me and Nahid or my other colleagues, they live here and they have a job. And when time comes to provide that family that sponsorship, because there are requirements, you have to show your taxes, you have to be employed, you have to show a certain amount of income in your bank, not just in your bank, and also and steady income to be able to actually file the sponsorship. There are certain, there is probably some Afghans that they are able to do that, but there are many of them that they are not able to do that. So many of our community members here in New York during COVID, they lost their jobs. They are unemployed because many of our community members are food vendors. They were driving taxi, Uber drivers, and they lost their jobs. They are still themselves struggling financially to get back. And so, but then there are people that they are in the bases. Every person that are in the bases today, families didn't come together. There are so many families that they have so many members of their families they left them behind in Afghanistan. They can also do the humanitarian paroles for their family members. Those families and families who do not have the proper income, they need sponsorship. So if we could get help for someone, and the good news is that 3 people could come together and say that we want to do this sponsorship for this one family. Thank God USCIS allows that. And
where would somebody do that if they were interested?
the app
How would they do that?
So we are going to need certain information from that person. It's going to be a co-sponsorship.
That they would reach out to your organization and to
yes,
yourself. Okay.
Definitely. Okay. Because right now we have hundreds of people that they are on the list, that they are going to apply for humanitarian paroles for their family, that we know they are going to need sponsorship. Okay. That's something. And the sponsorship, there are certain documents, that's not a lot, that needs to be submitted to the USCIS, and everything could be done remotely. We do not need any person to come to the office. We could take electronic signatures, and that's something that if people are willing to offer that help, we will work with them. Women for Afghan Women work with them. And also right here immediately in the office, we need attorneys could offer the work pro bono, because we have our full-time staff attorney and we have a part-time attorney, and we do have a group of attorneys that are, committed to help us. We need as many attorneys or legal assistants, paralegals who are able to submit. They don't have to be an attorney to do this work, as long as they have some experience doing the work. We need them to help us with these applications, because we have hundreds of people online. We get calls every single day. They're telling us that we uploaded the documents, we submitted all the documents, but we haven't heard, because it's a lot of work. The humanitarian parole application is usually, it's like a big file by the time it's ready to be submitted. So we need sponsorship, we need donations. If people are not willing to share documents for a sponsorship, if they offer donations, we could have someone else do that work for them. And even like paying for their applications, people usually don't have one person applying for. From the hundreds of people that reach out to us, we probably have two people that they are only applying for one person in Afghanistan. Other than that, it's families of, Rabia John, Afghan families are average, like 8 people, 6 people in Afghanistan. So we have a lot of people, and there are so many family members that reach out to us and they say they have family members at high risk, but they really cannot afford to pay $575 for each person. So there are these areas that, yes, if people are willing to donate.
Okay, those are helpful hints, and we'll remind everybody, and we'll share in the chat some of the links of the places that they can go to support and help based on what they like and what their interests might be. Everything, when all of this started in August, I mean, there was not a single newspaper or blog or TV channel, cable, anything that you'd open up that they weren't talking about Afghanistan. It's not the same now, right? Things have definitely quieted down in terms of coverage. But the need for people is still the same. Like you said, the 35+ million people living there, obviously they're not all going to get out, but there's still a high demand for people to get out. There are people waiting to come in at the staging areas. Have you felt the negative impact of the lack of coverage? Have you seen a drop off in donations or support? Tell us a little bit about what you're experiencing.
Definitely there is lack of coverage, as if I feel like, unfortunately, the airport, the Kabul airport scenes, that kind of is like, not there anymore. And yes, those were horrific scenes, but the coverage is barely there. In terms of donations, I want Christine, because she is our amazing development manager. She's the one managing that. If she doesn't mind, she could give a little bit information about that. In terms of coverage, there is less coverage, but I want to say one thing, that just because it's not on the news, that doesn't mean that the Taliban are not there, that women, there is only a a very small percentage of people were lucky to leave. So many people are still there. So many people are still suffering. Women still that are doctors, that are engineers, that are my cousins, that they had jobs, that they were the breadwinner of their family. They are at home. One of my cousins, she's a widow. She lost her husband, during this war. She was the one who was working. She has 4 children. She doesn't have a job. She really is just waiting to hear, like her, millions of other women, children, girls that they don't have school. There are school until 6th grade, and they're for girls. I just wanted to just, let you know that women, they still need help. We don't want to forget just because a group of people were able to leave, that doesn't mean that the Taliban have changed or they are different. Taliban from the mid-90s, they're still there. There is still a lot of violence against women from this government, and women need our help and our advocacy because unfortunately they cannot do it for themselves.
And they've shown, and the government has shown only more so in the last 2 months, that they are in fact not what they initially said, but they're going back and doing everything that they had lived up to. Before Christine talks about what she's seen in terms of donations, is there a quick note that you can add maybe on what, the focus of this has been on refugee resettlements and refugees who are coming into the US, but what else can people do to support women who are still there?
To really keep this conversation going, women still need to, support the organizations that, like us, that they are still so brave and doing this work, because there might be, some ideas that just because the Taliban's are there and with this organization is no longer there, women's rights organization don't exist. We are still there. We are still working, and the women is still, the women that are under our care, those children that they are still under our care, they need, so we need donations, we need support to still keep our operations going in Afghanistan, and the advocacy that is needed for women, because they can. The women, literally, we have seen on TV that women that who are so brave enough that really got on the street and start talking, there are guns in their head. So, when your life is at stake like that, you are not going to be able to talk about, your rights. And then I think every one of us here, we have the opportunity. We do have, the safety to speak on their behalf and to keep the conversation going. And most of all, keep our organization going, and, yeah, to donate and to support, to show support, that because our operations are still, because Christine said there are certain operations that are shut down temporarily, is because we cannot keep our shelters open, but they are still there. The staff is still there, the 1,200 staff, the women, children still need our help.
Well, and we're grateful for the work that you've done so bravely as an organization across all of these parts, through all of these years, right? Through all of these really difficult times and dangerous times. And the fact that you're still there, yeah, you're right. I think we just keep this conversation going. We can't forget about it. Christine, would you like to add a little more about what we were just talking about in terms of support and donations for women, for Afghan women?
Yes. I think the initial question was for the coverage that's dropped off about Afghanistan. What has been the effect on donations? It's certainly slowed down a little bit. We had a lot of people show up in the beginning, and we're very, very grateful for them. And people are still showing up and they still want to help, but it's definitely not as many as when the crisis started. We have people that want to do something, and we have created Amazon wish lists so that people can buy essentials for the arriving families, especially for families who are arriving with humanitarian parole, because like you said, they will not have the government's support because of their non-immigration status. In terms of our partnerships, we are very grateful to have partnerships with brands like Hive and hopefully other brands as well that are that are donating a part of their proceeds to Women for Afghan Women. Aside from Hive, we also have partnerships with the Rug Mine, which is an Afghan-owned company, and we are part of the coalition Welcome.us, which is great because there's really been a lack of coordination because of how fast the crisis started. And so any help that people can provide is very, very welcome.
Thank you. Those are some really great, helpful tips. And we'll remind everybody again at the end. I know we only have a few, 15 minutes left, and I'd love to allow people to ask questions. But before we do that, maybe we sort of can wind down our part of the conversation a little bit. Shugaba John, you as a case manager, you work with a lot of people. You said, as you mentioned, both yourself and many other members of Women for Afghan Women have family members there. But maybe tell us just, let's take this to a personal level. Tell us a story. Tell us a story of someone you've worked with, or maybe that you've seen or that you're attempting to work with, just to get a sense for everybody as we humanize this, what you're seeing and what you're experiencing.
Thank you so much. So when I started, hearing that refugees are not coming to New York, obviously, because you want to be able to help, I was kind of sad that, and I was hoping that I was able to be in Virginia at the bases, at the airport. I hadn't had the opportunity to be there yet, but I was so happy that we had quite few family members that they just came during this crisis, but they are with their families here in New York City. Almost all of them have came to our office. One family member 2 weeks ago called. The husband was already a community member. We know him because he started the applications for his wife and for his 3 girls. But the applications were nowhere to be, complete yet, and for the family to come. But he called us. He said that his wife and his daughters are here, that they were here to come. They were able to board the plane to come to the U.S. And he fortunately, they didn't have to spend so much time in one of the bases. He went and he picked them up. But we were so happy that he was someone who already somewhat established. He was in the city. And he already had an apartment that his wife and his daughters are here. But his wife called us about 2 weeks ago, and she said that they came with 2 pairs of clothing. And she said that for the past month, she goes, we wash the clothing in the sink and we put it and sometimes iron it and to dry, and we wear the clothes back. We really didn't bring anything. She said we packed, each one of us got 1 backpack, but we lost it. She said that they lost their shoes. She wears a hijab. She said when she got out of the plane, she didn't have her scarf. So it was really, really hard to listen to her. For someone that, who already have a husband here that has been living in New York for many years. But this man, basically, he lived with a group of friends that he shared a room. He did minimum wages and supported his family in Afghanistan. And they came and he wasn't ready. So he is living with, all 5 of them are living in 1-bedroom apartment here in New York City. And we were so happy to provide clothing for them. And it was donations that some community members literally purchased and sent it to the office. And we called that family and we asked her to come over. She speaks Pashto. I directly didn't communicate with her. I understand Pashto and communicate, very basic, but one of my wonderful colleagues who is so compassionate and speaks Pashto, we invited them to the office, literally brought her in the room and told her to just get whatever she needs, because we didn't have a lot of families that they needed those clothing, and they were exactly the clothing that they were preferred and wearing. It was everything that, that we had in the office, and she needed everything. She needed clothing. She came with 2 pairs of clothing because it was so unfortunate. Sometimes I say it's an experience that all of us can relate to, but because I came from Afghanistan when I was barely 20 years old, but my circumstances is so different. I came to a to a husband. I came through marriage, and he was excited to have me. He already had an apartment, but still, it was one of the experiences that I never forget. It was very difficult for me. I was depressed and cried for days. Still, when I remember about the days that I just came, I still cry because, but then I said, wow, how is that for these people? They left their homes literally, and they made a decision in matter of minutes.
That's right.
Then they weren't even able to access their money from the banks. They packed one bag and they lost that. They were in the same clothes for weeks.
Weeks, yeah.
They didn't change. They didn't have shoes. Literally, I think of I just like it's something that when I sleep, this is something that like it bothers me, and I'm like the experience, the trauma that these men and women and all these families that went through, it's going to haunt them. It's going to be with them for many, many years. And so I don't want us to forget that they are safe and they are here, because honestly, they are safe in some sense, but they need so much need.
Yeah, they will continue to need, they will
Yeah.
continue to need support. You're absolutely right. And that's a whole other subject that we could continue to talk
Yeah.
about, right, for hours. No, you're absolutely right. Thank you for sharing that beautiful story. It's good to know that that
Yeah.
gentleman was able to bring his
Yeah,
family safely, and that they were able to find a community like
Yeah.
yours, right, who will be
They
there
are.
support for them, not just, you know, from a material standpoint, but you know, I think psychologically that they
Yes.
will really rely on you
Yeah,
and what
they
your
know.
organization does.
Yes, they know that they have our community center. This is
Yeah.
a home like them. The entire demeanor of the women changed when my colleagues started speaking Pashto with her.
Yeah.
And she said she needed a sewing machine. She said because she can sew and she wants to make her own clothing for her daughters. So we are providing a machine for her.
That's great.
A sewing machine, and we already were able to enroll their children with Medicaid and supported enrolling their children to school and provided school supplies, backpack, and you know, this is only one family. There are several families that we've met and working
That
with.
you'll be able to, yeah, and you will continue to do so. Thank you for sharing that story. So I'd like to just ask if anybody has questions. If you feel comfortable, please feel free to just sort of share your screen, your video, and ask any questions you might have, or just put it in the chat, whatever you're more comfortable with. Any questions? No? Means you did it. Oh yes, Yana, please.
Thank you, Shkufa, for that lovely and interesting presentation. I was wondering, in thinking about the people who remain in Afghanistan, when the banks are closed, it's like impossible to get any money into the country, right? But then I heard of from one of our other partner organizations, Code to Inspire, which has been running a school for coding for girls, that they were able to get money in through because there are people who accept Bitcoin in inside the country. Have you had any experience with that? I mean, is that like a little aberration, or you know, or is that actually something that works?
Hi, this is Christine. We actually spoke with Freshta from Code to Inspire about that.
Yeah.
So it is possible to send, but for Women for Afghan Women, because we have such a large operation, it proved to be challenging because of the amount that we need to transfer or to send over to Afghanistan. We are still looking into it and trying to see how we could, you know, send money to Afghanistan directly. There are other options, but cryptocurrency might not be a very good fit for us, although we're still looking into how to make that happen.
Thank you. If I may,
Christine. Yes, there's another question. I think Ariel Watson.
Yeah, hi. Thank you everybody for hosting this. You've given us so much information. I apologize, my screen isn't on. I'm on a computer that doesn't have a camera at the moment, but hello, I'm Ariel Watson.
Hi.
I was just seeing, is there a possibility of sending clothing items over to Afghanistan? Do you have anything set up? I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but I know we talked about sending money just now, but are there certain items or even, I don't know, like how can we get more things like that over to people in Afghanistan at the moment?
Christine?
We can't really send stuff to Afghanistan at the moment. It's really hard to get stuff and people in and out at the moment
Yeah.
because
Okay.
of the situation.
Mhm.
So right now, we all of the material donations are gonna be for the families that are in the States.
Okay. Yeah, no, I understand. I was kind of assuming as much, but just wanted to see if anybody knew. But thank you for letting us know.
Thank you for that, Ariel. Any other questions? No? Okay.
I have one more
Yes.
question for
Yes,
Christine.
Yana.
Apparently there are these groups of like former military, etc., who have done evacuations of people from Afghanistan. I'm wondering like about those. Like, are they for real? Are they trustworthy? Are they safe? Are they still happening? I know that, at one point they were happening, but after the US withdrew, do you have any contact with those groups? I mean, can one recommend them for people who
Um,
try to get out?
we cannot really recommend them because they're not part of Women for Afghan Women, but we have a list of resources that we compiled in a Google Doc, which lists the different veteran groups that are helping still to evacuate people out of Afghanistan. So when the August 31st deadline passed, a lot of people a lot of people still are working to get people out. A lot of the veteran groups are prioritizing Afghans who were allies of the US,
Right.
and their families. But I know that there are other groups that are also trying to help with women's rights activists in Afghanistan and other very high risk individuals. All of those are in the resource document that we have. I can share the link in the chat.
Yes, I
That
believe
would be great, actually.
is that the same link I think we have on our website already?
That is, I think it's updated quite frequently. I know it's,
Yeah, I think
we
it's
had shared it in the beginning, so if you could reshare it, Christine, that would be great. Right. And we also have the website, both the Kota website and the Women for Afghan website in the chat. You can just click on it and put in your donation today, right after this call. All right, I think that's it then. And if there are no other questions, Shugaba John, thank you so much for participating, for talking about the work that you do, for just giving us such an in-depth and invaluable level of information on everything that's going on. And I think you're right. We, Kota, as an umbrella organization, their entire reason for being is to actually advocate and bring more visibility to partner organizations, especially women-focused organizations. So part of what we should do is continue to talk about this on a regular basis, and we will certainly partner with Women for Afghan Women to continue to do that. Christine, thank you as well for joining us. I know for both of you it was very last minute. We wish you and the organization, and Noe John and the work that she's doing right now today, much luck in your endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you also
Thank you.
on my behalf and everybody here at Kota. And thanks to all of you who participated and who are listening. As Rabia mentioned, there's our Eventbrite link is still open until the end of the day if you want to make a donation and spread it to other people as well. And then of course you can donate directly to Women for Afghan Women. So thank you very much and hope to see you all soon, perhaps even live. Take care and stay well.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you,
Thanks, everybody.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.